So Dom, as we were chatting before this call, it sounds very creepy. Like I've maybe because I've just watched, all of the You series, right? But like I've always kind of it went off to a great start. Watched you kind of just crush it with coaching, mentoring. I've told you a lot of my clients have invested in you over the years too. So it's about time I bring you on the podcast. And so for anyone listening, I want this episode to be one where we do take a deep dive into some popular topics, peptides, carb cycling, contest prep, etc., but also business as well. So my kickoff for you is you've coached clients from, IFBB pros to the functional space, etc. This is kind of like my icebreaker for you. What is one belief that you had that's totally been reversed in the last 5 years for you? Like, what's a coaching philosophy that just isn't even relevant anymore?
So, okay. I would say like not relevant anymore that I used to like strongly believe in was like RIR training. That was something that I programmed all the time for people. And then I always was on the board. I was always on the side of like there's always too much training stress. People aren't going to progress if I don't do this. And but then over time I just realized like how limiting that was. That and like I don't really believe in fasted cardio, but that's another one that
Think
I kind of
that
got rid of.
Yeah, I don't even hear that really anymore. I don't know if you were big in the flexible dieting space. I feel like all of us were at some point. Maybe you missed out on that, but I just think about how 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I was still coaching clients to, eat a Pop-Tart before they worked out. I had no idea. Like good times. I think powerlifting really ruined me, like not
Yeah.
obviously, but just being around that type and having the coach that I did, like flexible dieting was so freaking popular. But it's
Yeah,
interesting.
I wasn't in the flexible dieting space because I always looked at it like almost like a cop out to eat whatever you wanted. And I I always believed that it was more responsible to teach somebody new how to eat with a meal plan rather than just giving them macros and letting them figure it out on their own. But I always used to get pushback from people. They'd say like you're instilling eating disorder in them. But it's understandable to a degree. But like when we were talking when you asked me to come on, I told you like one thing that bothers me a lot is like making a judgment call with no context. So like if you hear that I give meal plans to new people, you're like, what the hell? That's not right. But I teach these people how to swap a food, change a food. Like I teach them how to have variability, but I think a meal plan actually is a lot more structure for somebody like fresh, signed up with you, has never worked with a coach. I love meal plans for that purpose because I need to give them structure. They have no clue what a macro is.
I'm with you. I mean, that's the same thing with like helping someone start a business, right? If it's like, oh, just like talk about your offer. Well, like you have to have a checklist in order to, it's like macros, right? Like the whole concept of, well, I don't want to track macros. I just want to eat intuitively. Well, so does everyone. But like to eat intuitively, you need to know how to eat, what portions
Yeah.
to take. So, I mean, I'm totally with you. I think anyone listening to this podcast is going to be like, I agree with you on, a meal plan or overview for a new client. It makes sense. They don't know where to start, right? My favorite is when a new client is like, what recipes do you have? I'm like, hey, can we stick to some single ingredient shit? Like, don't even think about crock pots right now. Like, just pause. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, okay, so with this, in my opinion, still this push for everyone to be functional, right? Call it whatever you want. But I think we're in a space now in 2025 where coaches feel really behind if they aren't well versed in even a simple lab panel. Would you agree?
100%.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to go too heavy into lab work, but I do want to know, like, what are some ways that coaches can maybe make a person's health worse, even if they have good intentions, if they're maybe not getting some kind of basic blood panel done? And this is not me saying every coach needs to know everything and people should freak out after hearing this, but in general, I think we still have a lot of like calories in, calories out coaches and people still mentoring like that. And then coaches that are like, oh no, we have to, learn every lab under the sun. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it's a healthy midline.
Yeah.
Uh, I think if you're not, if you're working with some people who are pretty new or just it's a new client to you, you could try dieting, you could try reverse dieting, you could try some stuff before getting labs, which I think is always the responsible thing to do. I'm definitely not the guy that tells you to get labs the day you sign up with me. Just because there's a lot of low hanging fruit we could probably correct first. And then from there, we could see, okay, now it's been 2, 3 months. We got you moving, we got you on a diet, etc. And you're not making any progress at this point. Now we could probably dive a little bit deeper. Now, I think the problem with like not understanding that stuff and just trying to go all out is now you could be dealing with somebody with like, I don't know, really bad like adrenal insufficiency. Maybe it's a really stressed mom. She doesn't sleep much. She has 2 young kids. She wakes up a lot throughout the night, right? And then you're trying to diet this person just through a calorie in, calorie out style dieting, which on paper foundationally, yes, is correct, but there's you need more context at that point. And that's where I think now the lab panel becomes a little bit more important based on the person you're working with like that. It's situational, but I do think it is good to know basic lab work and at least have a good grasp and understanding. Now, that being said, you shouldn't be getting complex lab panels if you don't know how to explain complex lab panels. And that's a mistake I see coaches do all the time. They'll reach out to me and like I've been blessed the last 3 years, I've been mentoring people. Like I actually looked this up the other day, but like I've worked with about 380 coaches now between one-on-one or through like group live classes that I do. Um, and one of the biggest mistakes people would always do, they like give me a lab panel and it's like this full lab panel. They're like, all right, what's, and I'm like, what's wrong with it? And they're like, oh, I was going to go over it with you. And I'm like, why are you telling them to buy this stuff if you don't know this stuff? So that's where I think like there's overdoing it. And then it turns into like, we gotta we gotta flush. You gotta sit home. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do, and then the stress gets even worse. So I think this is just a nice midline that you have to ride a lot of the time. That's why like I'm also kind of like on both ends of the spectrum with like adrenal stuff, for example. I'm not the guy to tell you to like, hey, you're not going to train. I don't want you to. I'm going to try to find a middle ground to where you can still do some stuff so I don't like flip the stress on you a different way where now there's all this mental stress because I told you you can't go to the gym anymore. But I'm also going to try to fix the problem at the same time. But that's hard to that takes a long time to learn how to do, and that's where I think you do need to just at least start with some basic lab panel knowledge.
Well, and what I see happen too is a coach will go through something personally, and then they all of a sudden want labs for everything, right?
Yeah,
Like, oh, they had parasites. Now it's like everyone needs
every
to get
client
tested
has a
for
parasite.
parasites,
Yeah,
right? And I can even speak from experience on this because I went through a lot of these things myself too, with really bad adrenal insufficiency, horrible hormones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But with that being said, like I don't think that everyone needs to be an expert at everything, right? Like there was, I always had a dietitian or gut kind of expert on hand for GI maps or things like that. But my question then becomes, okay, so yeah, if you have somebody that's not losing weight and they're doing everything and you can validate everything, but they really need to get labs done, then it's the question of, well, I can't pay for this, right? Like, what do I do? Because that's what coaches ask me. They're like, hey, I know this client needs this, but like they don't have or they don't see the value in spending a few $100s on XYZ lab. How do you coach your clients through that if they truly do need that and that is the next step?
I think you have two options. I I think you could do like a la carte testing. Like I'm partnered with Synergistic Labs. We have a la carte testing where you could checkbox individual markers. So then maybe we pick the ones that we do like a little questionnaire based on lifestyle and stuff, and then we just pick what we think from there just to really mitigate the price as much as we can. If it truly is a financial thing, if they're not bought into the process and like, do you really need me to like read labs? Like, or hey, you're not a doctor, why are you reading my labs type of deal? That's where I think it's good to educate. I think the more you can educate the client, the bigger the buy-in is and the trust goes up. That's what I always tell these coaches and why I think it's important to understand like really basic physio, because if you can explain things really well to people, they'll also pick up like, oh damn, he really knows like a lot of this stuff. And not just by telling me, like he's explaining it in a way like a 10-year-old would understand. Like, and that really shows people that you actually know what you're talking about when it comes to that stuff. And that's where I think like the two situations I would personally deal with, that's how I would deal with it. Either a la carte testing if it is like just financial purpose, and that's why you can't, or it's more of a belief in you as the coach and the provider at that point. Like, do you actually know? Why would you need to read my labs type of deal? I think that turns into now like, hey, let's just put the labs to the side. I need to get this client to understand that I know this stuff and I need to show them that I know this stuff. It's like a transfer of trust, really, what you're trying to do.
I'm with you on that because it's similar to, oh my God, why would anyone ever pay me X for coaching, right?
Yeah.
You convey what the future looks like. You've articulated that. You're not selling with weekly check-ins, blah, 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 right? And so it's same thing with labs. If you just tell somebody you need labs, tell them the benefit of that and what you need to uncover based on symptoms. But I'm with you. I think that a lot of coaches just fail to articulate that due to a lack of confidence in whatever they're trying to get tested. So I'm going to pivot over to peptides, which I feel like is such a hot topic today. So I'm going to first ask you, what's like the first peptide you ever took?
Um, Probably one of the IGF ones, like a LR3 or a DES back when I was bodybuilding. That was probably like one of the first ones that I got introduced to.
What's your current peptide stack?
I take GHK, copper. I take SLU. I take retatrutide. I take dihexa. I take BPC, thymosin alpha 1.
You like BPC? What have you noticed with that?
I take it. I'm just recovering from an injury right now,
Makes sense then. Okay.
so I'm taking it for that. The GHK I'm using similar because of the injury. Really good for like stem cell migration and communication. And then I like thymosin alpha 1 during seasonal changes. So like I'm in the north, so there's seasonal changes. It's
Where
good
are
to
you at?
I'm in Michigan, right
I'm in
outside.
I'm in Ohio.
Okay, I'm like right outside of Detroit.
Okay, I'm in Cleveland.
So like in our area, we have seasonal shifts. Sometimes it's good to match seasonal shifts with like immune support. So like right now, like you and I are dealing with a ton of pollen. So like this is a good time to mitigate some immune modulation. So like thymosin alpha 1's a good role here. But that's all I'm taking. Oh, and 5-amino 1-MQ. It's not technically a peptide, but it's a research
Like that's what
compound.
I'm taking. People are listening to this being like, did you just say the alphabet to me? But people always ask me, like Taylor, with your peptide stack, what have you noticed the biggest difference in? Like which ones? Because some of them, because I'm also taking SLU and things like that, and some of them I've noticed a big difference with, and some of them I'm like, I don't really know until one day you're like, oh, it's been a few months, and I think now I notice. But like the GHKCU, I 1000% notice the difference. Like as a female in like skin and my hair grows a lot.
Yeah, my hair has gotten so much thicker since I started taking it.
Like love it.
Like yeah, I never had like acne or anything, but even my skin has just gotten so much better. It's actually a really cool peptide. It's a really cool product.
Yeah.
Definitely one that works really well. I think the efficacy behind it's high, and the studies are really consistent with it too.
So if somebody is new to peptides, right? Because I think the question is always like, where do you start? How do you kind of explain that, right? Obviously, people have to tell you what they're looking for, et
Yeah.
cetera. But people that just kind of have no idea, right? Let's base this off of somebody that's, I would say, a fit person, maybe a coach that we're talking to that hasn't dove into peptides yet. Not a competitor, but just fit
Yeah.
person wanting some enhancements. Where would you start them?
Just like I always do like a needs analysis with them and just say like, what are you looking to gain out of this? Right? Is it your day of work is taking you a long time? You have a lack of focus? Is it, a training goal you have? And we kind of go from there. But I think with a coach is a great example. There's work related stuff and then there's training related stuff with a coach, which I think is a really nice, actually a really good example to go over because that's where you could use things like your dihexa. for like cognitive support, really good for like spinal density, which like the more spines you have, the more communication you can get like with neurons. It's also really good for like synapse density and also synapse regeneration and just like helping that ability for neurons to communicate. And then we also have the roles of like endurance stuff. Maybe they're into endurance sports. Now like SLU becomes a little bit more of something, right? Type 2A muscle fiber activity adaptations we get from that, less reliance on glycolysis. Um, it just really, I would say with a coach, there's two ends of it, which I think is a really nice way to look at it. Methylene blue is one you could use as a coach. It's not a peptide, but it's kind of like all clumped up in that category. Like methylene blue is a great product. I think really good for like days where you have a huge workload. It really increases like the rate at like oxygen consumption inside of your brain. So one thing I always tell people with like that is energy demand mismatch is a real thing. So like if you take that and you're not really doing much, that's where like there's more oxidative stress potential sometimes. And you actually could do negative if you're taking too much of those things and you're not outputting as much. Like for example, today, like I had 5 mentee calls before us, right? So a huge workload day, lots of talking, lots of just conversation. So like I took a methylene blue tablet before I started my calls. Today would be a day that I would use that. And that's how I teach coaches to use methylene blue. Like use it on your heaviest workload days, and that's pretty much it. Because when we start stacking all these mitochondrial, like enhancing peptides, we have like mitochondrial spin, they call it. And that's just like too much output. Then you get dysfunctional mitochondria. That causes issues over time. So I just say be selective with the use. But I just go a lot off of the goal, right? But I think like coaches can use some in training stuff because a lot of them are training actively. And then I think there is really good benefit for the cognitive ones with coaches too, because there's work related. And a lot of the coaches I've helped with this stuff, they always come back to me like, I'm taking less caffeine. I feel more focused throughout the day. I stopped taking Adderall because of the methylene blue. I personally stopped taking Adderall because of methylene blue. Like I don't need Adderall anymore. I haven't taken Adderall probably almost 2 years because of methylene blue.
Like every coach takes Adderall.
Yeah,
Like,
Adderall, Vyvanse, like all
yeah,
that stuff.
yeah. And that was my kind of where I wanted to go with this next was the combination of it, right? Because I think you can stack too many things that
100%.
just don't work. And so if a coach is coming to you and let's say they're really in like a heavy grind season and they're looking for again something that's going to help them with cognitive function, like what would kind of be your main stack?
Yeah, my main stack for that would be like a nasal spray of like Simax and Slanac. Um, I like that. I take that on days where I have a lot of work. I then put like I would put dihexa in that mix too, and then a methylene blue. But like even with methylene blue, like I only take like 7.5 milligrams, and that's usually enough for me. But that would be kind of what I would do like on heaviest work days. But that's Simax and Slanac stuff or Slanank, whatever. I can't, however you say it, right? But those are some of my favorite cognitive peptides because they work really, really well. Um,
Looking at those,
I
honestly,
think
they've
the
been in like my
Slanac,
cart for a minute.
dude, the Slanac is really good because I like that because of the anti-anxiety effects that it causes.
Correct.
Now, I don't have anxiety really ever,
No, but we run businesses.
but you get the overwhelmingness from work
Right,
and it helps reduce that a lot.
right.
And that's what I like about it. And it keeps your workflow really steady. So you don't feel overwhelmed with like all your daily tasks you have. That's one of my favorite peptides.
Question for you. I have heard that can be addictive, which I mean, I guess anything could, but like question, like, are you taking that? It sounds like one, you're extremely responsible with the way you're taking peptides, but um, if you were to take that, one, I'm wondering if you're doing like a nasal spray or injection, which would
Nasal
you
spray.
prefer? Okay.
You
Are you
want
doing
nasal
that?
spray, better for blood-brain barrier.
So are you doing that like 5 days a week or just like on heavy workload days?
I do it Monday through Friday.
Okay.
And
And
then with the addictiveness, it is an issue. but more of an issue with injectable forms than intranasal forms.
At this point, I'm really not wanting another butt poke. Like, I'll be real with you. Like, I'm kind of tired of it. Like, there's too many damn needles that I'm dealing with.
Yeah,
I'm like,
those are probably best served actually as intranasal peptides. So
okay, that's
yeah,
helpful. That's helpful. Yeah, that's been on my truly in my cart for a minute. And I'm like, do I want another injection? Does this nasal thing break? I've heard mixed, reviews.
yeah.
So
So people have said with the with like Slinac is a lot of people are will try to use it to get off of anti-anxiety meds.
correct.
So the dosing is like 5x what I would recommend to somebody that's just taking it for like work purposes and focus and stuff like that. So that's where like we get the addiction potential with it just because the dose is so high if you're trying to replace like a Zoloft, you know, and that's where we have a shift in like dosing and potential addiction. Um, but it's more, I would say, of depending on the person, it could even be just psychologically dependency, like kind of like melatonin, where like you think you're addicted to it, but really it's more of a psychological dependency, not a physiological dependency.
Have you um have you dabbled with like NAD plus? I'm sure you have.
I actually no, I haven't.
Okay.
Kind of the reason I don't really use NAD plus personally is because around the age of 40, we lose about 50% of our NAD levels. And a lot of that's because of a pathway in our body called the salvage pathway. There's an enzyme that's kind of involved in like taking all like the precursors and making them NAD again. And when you're about 40, like that enzyme's really low. But we're younger, we train a lot, which also stimulates NAD production as well. And I use 5-amino 1-MQ, which inhibits an enzyme that is involved in NAD breakdown. So now our salvage pathway works a little bit more efficiently. So I just take 5-amino and then I take true niagen, which is a nicotinamide riboside, so like a precursor to NAD. I just do that every day. And for me personally, that's been enough to where like I haven't validated the need for me to try NAD yet, just because theoretically I don't think I really need to yet.
Makes sense. Yeah. People are listening right now being like, yeah, totally. Absolutely. Let's just get all those things. So on a daily basis, how many peptides are you taking? Like what are your like Monday through Friday? Like how many, if you had to guess?
Um,
It's a morning routine, let me tell you.
yeah, probably like 5 or 6.
Yeah. And how
Yeah,
many are
probably
injections versus like another way?
3 are injections, and then I do the intranasal, and then the others are just orals.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So I want to pivot into just mistakes you see with a few topics. Okay. So the first one is carb cycling. I want to know the biggest mistake that you see your face right now. The biggest mistake that you see with carb cycling.
Um,
I'm sure you could really do a whole workshop on this right now.
yeah, I probably
I
could
know
talk
it's going
about
to
this
be
for like
hard. It's
two
going to be hard
hours.
to break it down into bullet points. But
But like TLDR it, the way the way I think people mess up with carb cycling a lot of times is one, I've worked with coaches that literally don't track calories and they just have like diets written out and they'll just like, oh, this is their low carb day, this is their high carb day, whatever. And like I've sat there and like calculated their diet sometimes and like they're the exact same calories. So like there's no calorie fluctuation. It's more like a macro fluctuation that's happening. And that's like one of the biggest mistakes I see coaches make. I think coaches have gotten better with that just because like there's more spreadsheets available. There's stuff like to track food now. But that was one thing that I saw a lot. The next thing is like people just being too soft with their dieting approaches, meaning they're just and I think it's valid to a degree. I think for newer coaches, it's hard to like emotionally detach from what you're asking the client to do. So like in my one of my contest prep like courses I teach, like I always tell people like you have to emotionally detach from the work you're asking these people to do because it's a lot. Like an hour of cardio, these dig days, like all this stuff you're asking them to do, you know it's gonna suck. but you have to emotionally detach yourself from asking them to do that. Otherwise, you're not going to get the progress you're looking for. You're just always going to play it safe. You're always going to be on the more conservative side when you don't need to be, and you're not going to get them the results they're looking for. But I think that's a big mistake. So like we'll have like we'll just use an example. We'll have like a high day 2,500 calorie, and we'll have a low day 2,200 calorie. Like that's not a big enough swing between calorie counts on those days to actually create a deficit or actually create some sort of fat reliance at that point. So gaps that are too close between cyclical days is a big issue you see a lot of the time. Um, that's why like I do tell people to count weekly calorie intake. It does help and it is a good way to look at things. Again, like CECO is foundational, right? Then we add another layer on top with metabolism, but it's just a good place to know, right? Um, I don't hate on CECO, but there's obviously layers to it. But that's a big mistake I see. Like if I take a diet and I look at some of the guys in prep right now, some of their diets are like dig days are like the lowest calorie day. That's like 1,500, 2,000 calories. But then their refeed is like 5,000. So the swing is extremely dramatic, right? But it has to be because you have to, again, like I tell people, you have to almost communicate to the body that the energy scarcity is over during a refeed, and it has to sense that. So that's the biggest mistake I see people make is just they're too conservative with their diet setup, or their scheduling is very poor. Like they'll do 2 low days, then feed them right away. I like multiple consecutive digs and pushes just because that's what actually creates a deficit, right? I tell people all the time, you train on yesterday's food. You're not training on the food you ate right now. You're training on yesterday's food. So there's carryover. That's why I think like you need at least 3 days in a row to really put that last high day behind you and start getting back into like another hole for fat loss.
Which it's funny you say that, like you're training on yesterday's food, because I feel like that's such a, well, it's true, but it's not the way a lot of coaches are teaching. I mean, I've definitely said things like, this is your high carb day. Make sure you plan this around like your hardest workout. But in reality, I think it could benefit you the day before your hardest workout, right? Like little
Yeah,
things.
like I always give refeeds the day before a hard workout. Like I do endurance training now. I always eat hardest the day before a big training session. But like peri-workout nutrition like is important to a degree. I mean, we saw some pretty good research from like Mendo, Mendo and them. Are you familiar with
Yeah. Yep.
yeah. So like the pre-workout carb thing that they did was I was so happy when that came out because I was like, I've been saying this for years. And like it's finally like out there that there's some good data behind it now. But that's why I think people mess up with carb cycling a lot. They don't push for long enough days in a row, and it's just not enough of a time to get into these digs. I like using high days as rest days. I don't like using them as training days.
I did that forever and I loved it. Like
Yeah.
loved it because in my brain it kind of makes more sense. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm resting, but I'm like feeding up.
Yeah, you're like I said, the rest like these high days deep in preps, deep not just preps, but like deep in fat loss phases, wedding preps, photo shoots, whatever you're getting ready for. Those rest day, high day refeeds, they're really designed to tell the body like, hey, the scarcity is done, right? Like there's the expenditure is really low because you're not doing much, and then you're eating a ton. So the body at that point senses like, okay, this is a very big plus day. We're going to be in a very big surplus that day.
What about carb cycling during a reverse diet?
I like it. I think it's good. I think it's good for people who like mentally can't put weight on fast.
There's just mixed theories about like should you not. I do that based on the client, right? It's all client dependent. Some clients mentally, like you said, like they just kind of
Yeah.
that. I think it's helpful when you've dieted somebody pretty hard and they're just like hungry immediately post. I think it just like helps them kind of pace themselves in the reverse. Um,
I
which,
do that with lifestyle clients a lot. Like
yeah,
if I'm
correct.
carb cycling them and then like let's say we hit our vacation or our goal, whatever it is, then the way out of that, let's say it was like 5 low days, 2 high days, I'll actually just add like a high day every couple weeks. So they'll go from like 5-2 to 4-3, then eventually to 3-4, then eventually to 2-4, then eventually to just high days every day.
Yep. Okay. Biggest mistake you see coaches make with client retention.
Um,
And
I
those
think
like business.
I mean, I think there's layers to it, but I think like I was just talking to somebody the other day about this because there was some he was having retention rate issues with clients just like not checking in and not like communicating, which like I mean some people are going to ghost us. There's nothing we could do about that, but I do think there's also understanding about like communicating with people maybe a step too early. Like they're not ready for the next phase that you want to put them in, and then you're pushing them, or you're just communicating to them you're communicating to them in the wrong way at the wrong time. And that for a lot of people pushes people away. That's hard to gauge, but that's where like you need to have some good open communication with people. Because if you could understand like what type of stage that person's in, you can communicate with them a lot better. And that actually can help a lot with retention. I also think just like, going out of your boundary every once in a while is helpful with retention. I'm very big on boundaries in coaching, but I'm also where every once in a while it probably helps your retention rather than just hurting your boundary. What I mean by that is like I have like a strict cutoff time, like when I'll respond to a text, like 7 p.m. is like you message me after you're getting answered the next day type of deal. But every once in a while, I might answer so and so. I might answer a question that somebody says after hours because for some people, it's enough to where they feel like,
Oh,
oh, like,
absolutely.
yeah, he answered me. Like, that's awesome. I know he's not working right now, but he did it. I think that increases client retention over time. It's just not something you make it a habit of, right? Because now you're kind of just peeling your boundary down at that point.
Correct.
But those are helpful. Those are useful. I think when you go out of your way to like help people understand a little bit more is useful too. Some coaches are very just like bullet point, here's your changes for the week. See ya. Um, Sometimes it's good to explain. Do I think you need to explain every single time? No, but it is good to explain things when you're doing things too, just to help them understand a little bit more. All that little stuff adds up and really does help with client retention. I mean, I'd say like my client retention is on an average of like 18 months, which is really high. And I would say I've had clients that are on my roster still to this day, 5, 6 years at this point.
Yeah.
Um, and like my attrition rate's really low. It's like if somebody signs up with me, they're with me for a minimum of 18 months usually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's yeah, same for me. I'm with you. It's like most of my clients are signing 2, 3, sometimes even 4-year contracts, right? Like business wise and fitness, it's been 22 months forever. At a very, in my opinion, like moderate rate. And similar to what you said about the boundaries, because that could be a whole other episode itself. But where I want coaches to listen to that and not do something stupid is if you do go out of a boundary, it needs to not be out of scarcity because what I see happen all the time is a coach will have 3 clients drop in the same week. They think their business is crumbling. They start to panic. And all of a sudden, they're responding all the time, all hours, on the weekends. But I'm with you, right? Like there are times where I have answered things on a Saturday morning. Oh my God, thank you so much. I enjoy your weekend. Like, you know what I mean? You always get those, at least in my
Yeah.
opinion. So I'm with you. Because I think boundaries they remove that like codependency that can be created. So I agree with you. I also think like in terms of mistakes for retention strategies, it's not being able to define what success looks like in the first 30 days, right? I think that when we get a new client, sometimes coaches are like, okay, I got one, payment made, next client, right? And not intentionally, but they're so obsessed with like getting the client on the roster. And then they forget about how to actually measure success and make sure they're good because retention to me is equal parts empathy and coaching, but also like a system behind it to measure it. And most coaches don't even fucking know. They're like, oh yeah, I think our attention's good. Then they like actually look and they're getting new clients every 3 months.
Yeah.
Keep them.
Yeah, I think you should have like some sort of spreadsheet or something with like
Some sort of spreadsheet. Yes.
just like a sign up, leave kind of
Ah.
different, just a net positive, net negative kind of rate of client sign up client. Because like that also could help you. You could lose 3 clients in a week, but then not realize that you signed up 10 in the last 2 months and you're actually at a +7, but you freaked out about the 3 that left. You're still in a linear growth at that point. And that's where I think fitness coaches lack a lot of business skill and financial like literacy. Um, it's just something I see a lot, and it's like my mentorship is not business related,
I know.
but I do end up doing so much when I'm in these calls with people because I am extremely financially literate. And it's like, how aren't you guys seeing these things? Like, why don't you have these things kind of, it's just because they want to coach. They just want to do X's and O's. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. You need to hire somebody to do this for you then.
Well, and to your point, like same, right? Like my business mentoring involves emotional intelligence because I've never seen so many grown ass buff men have mental breakdowns. Like we live in an industry or work in an industry where the men are way more feminine and the women are fucking alpha as shit. And it's like this weird like, dichotomy of like, wait, this is backwards. Like, I don't know if you've noticed that, but like that is pay attention. It's 100% freaking true. But it's like, wait, what? Like, how is that even going on? But I say that because yes, like the amount of coaches where, we can't even get to the strategy because you are so scared to like take a step. Like you're so afraid to talk about your offer. And so meanwhile, they're sending you lab reviews, but they can't even land a sale confidently, right? And so I agree. Like you can be the best coach in the world, but that's the bare fucking minimum. That's not being a good business owner. And so if
Yeah.
you're a great coach, you can go be an assistant coach. Like that's cool. But like you said, outsource, get more clients to do the things. But I'm with you on that. We work in a very interesting industry. Absolutely. It's a
Oh, yeah.
fun.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, half these people don't even know what they owe in taxes half the time.
I know, and we talk about that too, right? Or like my favorite is, oh my God, my taxes. And I'm like, you knew this was coming a year ago. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Oh my God, I'm paying taxes. Like it cracks me up. I can't invest in anything right now because of taxes. I'm like, you literally knew about this like a year ago, but understood. Okay, question for you. It's kind of about retention, but also about my clients that are more so on like the bodybuilding side. So I work with quite a few coaches where, and I'm sure you get this too, where you get to a certain point in your business where, in my opinion, every time the business grows about 20%, some shit breaks, right? A system, you, whatever. And so coaches will get to this new level of income, roster size, whatever, and all of a sudden they're only doing peaking. All their clients are competing. There's shows every freaking weekend, and now they can't even think about scaling the business, right? And I don't know, I'm not even gonna go into like text messaging your clients or giving your cell phone number. But for me, I've only given my cell phone number during peaking protocols. That's just like how I operate. But I want to know how you're able to manage so many clients competing while also being able to focus on growing the business, delivering results, etc. Because I do think there is a way, but I think coaches get so hyper fixated on that they can't get out of it.
Yeah. Well, I think the first and foremost, you have to have a good system for your coaching, because that's like where you should be able to handle all these clients competing, and even like, I mean, I've had North American situations where like I've had 8 people in the week. Like that's a lot of people to peak in just a single week, but it wasn't really that stressful because of just systems, right? Like you should have things, made, situated, organized.
So give me an example. Let's say you're going into peak week and you have 3 clients peaking.
Yeah, so like what I'll do is like on everybody's Google sheet at that point, I have a spreadsheet on there for like all their peak week stuff as far as like weight, water, salt. whatever, right? That kind of stuff. That's going to be really constant throughout the peak week. It's already set up there. It's there. They can start tracking it. It's already done. So that's one less thing I have to do. Then the next thing after that, they'll all have a checklist of stuff they have to buy. And that's going to change person to person. Most of it's the same person to person, but then there's individual like little caveats that will change. That's going to be on their sheet starting at 7 days out, maybe even 10 days out. Like just start buying the stuff from now. That's one less thing I have to worry about. And then from that point, I'll set up a schedule on that peak week sheet. It'll tell them what days they're going to check in, and I have all that written out. So then now on my end, Tuesday comes around. All right, Sally, Joe, and Mike are all checking in. I know that when I wake up that day or before I go to bed the day before. All right, I have these check-ins coming in for peak week, so on and so forth, right? So that's another thing that I don't have to worry about. It's just all scheduled out. I think if you could have good, strong structure, you can handle this stuff really, really easily.
Well,
And I
and
also think
yeah,
peaking is the easiest thing in coaching, but
I am not, well, you are significantly more of a pro than me, but I never felt like that was the hard week. I felt like that was the, like, we made
I
it
think it's one of
week.
the easiest weeks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think everything in business always kind of comes back to you managing your schedule and efficiency, right? Like either
Yeah.
spending so much focus on stressing about the fact that you have a lot of clients speaking that you can't get the other shit in your business done, right?
Yeah. Another thing I think a lot of coaches do wrong, sorry to interrupt you on
Yeah.
the peak week stuff, is they try, I don't know why, but they try to be like fancy with stuff and like try to tell clients like, all right, when you wake up, I'll tell you what to eat. Like, why not just tell them the night before? Because not much is going to change when they wake up the next day. And if they wake up the next day and they're 2 pounds lighter than you thought they were going to be, guess what? You could add food to meal two, four, five, six. Like, just because they already ate meal one, it doesn't mean it ruined the day. That's one thing that, like, I talked to a lot of athletes that had coaches like that, and they all told me that that was like the most stressful thing they dealt with. It was like the most anxiety thing. So not only was it a huge thing on your plate for work, it also stressed your clients out at the same time. Like during peak week, the way I do it, or even just during preps too, the day you check in, you know what you're eating. So you don't have to wait for me to answer you when
Well,
you
yeah.
wake up. But a lot of coaches do this like, all right, yeah, when you wake up, I'll tell you exactly what to eat. Like, dude, you're just going to tell them to eat practically what they ate the day before. Why make it harder on everybody? Now, do that with 5 people during peak week. Now you're scrambling, you're rushing. How are you going to do other tasks throughout the day? It's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
No, I mean, I was going to ask you what a mistake was, and I agree with you. I think trying to get too fancy or too customized because I always had a sample meal plan for peak week, and whether it was front loading carbs or back loading, depending on the client, but realistically, most of them were fairly similar. And what you said, like if there was a client that dropped a ton of weight overnight, okay, cool, we'll like address that in the next day, but you're not screwed if it wasn't meal one. Because
Yeah,
my goal is to minimize every bit of stress for that client during peak week.
yeah. Which is and I mean, in theory, your peak week should almost be set up based on past like refeeding, past practice that you've done. Maybe you're a coach who likes to mock peak. Like I don't really do all that, but like I'll mock load. So I kind of have an idea of what carb amount you need to start at. So like for me, pretty much up to 2 days out, I practically know what you're going to be doing, right? We just change things as needed as time goes on. And then on one day out, I send out a schedule the night before. It's just like in my notes and I just copy paste it and it tells them like what time they're going to check in, what time they're going to eat a meal, and it's just a nice schedule because then if I'm not at the show, like if I'm home, at least I can look at the clock and be like, okay, they're all going to check in an hour. I need to make sure I'm sitting. I can stop doing whatever I'm doing and I can just focus on getting back to them. And I also kind of have an idea of what the next meal is going to be already. And then I just confirm or change at that point. Because at that point of a prep, like you should really know what these people are going to do. You shouldn't have to sit in front of a computer, open up a spreadsheet, and know and type out exactly what this meal is going to be. That's, I think you're too dependent on technology at that point.
unpopular opinion, but I think we also get too hyper fixated on customization.
Yeah.
Like clients and my clients will ask me, how are you programming all these new people and onboarding people? It's like, okay, my first few clients way back in the day had custom programs, right? But like, not everyone needs to squat differently. You know what I mean? Like you start to get like A1, B1,
Yeah.
B2, like you just kind of create sequences, right? And you make modifications based on either equipment or injuries or whatever, right? But not everything needs to be absolutely customized.
No, I think customization comes in through feedback.
Agreed.
I don't know you. I don't know how you
Agreed.
respond to food. I don't know how you respond to certain movements. I don't know any of that when you sign up with me. Let's start with this good structured skeleton that we know works pretty well. It's got good foundation, it's got good bones. Now, after 2 weeks, okay, what did we not like? What did we like? What didn't do well? What did well? That's where we start to make adjustments and start to make that's real customization. Customization is when you actually work with somebody's feedback.
Working with a client year two is so much more fun than year one.
Oh, yeah, big time.
You know what I mean? Like then it's like, hell yeah, we know what we're doing. I hate for other coaches, like when I see them coach hopping too, because they just like didn't sit with that person long enough.
Yeah.
But um, and with somebody like you that's got long retention, I mean, I know you get that. But all right, I want to ask you a few kind of like business questions. So the first one's hopefully simple, but I think really relatable to those listening. But what was a moment as you were growing your roster, et cetera, where you thought everything feels like it sucks, I'm dying, I think everything's gonna crumble, but like it actually didn't?
Um, I think a couple of years ago, just coming off of like a ton of really tough losses, like with competitors, like lost the card by one placing, lost, a competitor like going behind my back, hiring a coach for peak week, like that all happened like within a couple spans of a couple months. And I was like, whatever, screw these competitors. I'm done with contest prep, like blah, blah, blah. And but I mean, that's all just emotional response and, everything's obviously okay. So,
It's all emotional, right? And maybe that's a question too, because you seem like somebody that is very emotionally intelligent. I realize we just met like 45 minutes ago, but business business is really hard not to take personal, right? And I think it's, in my opinion, probably the biggest reason that coaches don't scale. Well, Dom never had to DM people. Why should I? I'm like, well, you're not fucking Dom, bro. Like, get your ass in the DMs. I don't care what you think. Like, you have to talk to people. You know what I mean? Like, whatever
yeah,
it is, like, that is one thing I hear all the time. Well, so and so never had to. Okay, well, they started in 2013. So it's 2025. You're gonna have to talk to strangers.
yeah.
I'm sorry, right? And we get so caught up with like our hurt feelings, but like your lack of success is not like a personal attack, right? And I think people expect business to be hard, but not this hard.
Yeah, I think but like I think one of the things that I tell people too is like when stuff like that happens is just like you have to think and not react. You can't react to stuff. When you react to stuff, that's when you're just emotionally talking and emotionally responding. It's like a client, let's say a client pisses you off and you're having like a heated conversation. I tell people don't answer for 2 hours. Just leave,
Absolutely.
just don't answer anymore. You're annoyed, they're annoyed, just let it die off and you'll probably have a better conversation if you do that. Like I always tell people to step back, think, don't react. That's always a great way to look
Yep.
at it. Um, I think you have to be able to emotionally disconnect. When you become too emotionally invested in business, you're gonna start to one like really look too like over what's the word I'm looking for? Like too desperate online all the time. You're gonna look like you don't know what you're talking about because you're just constantly like just trying to keep up with whatever's hot and you're not an expert in everything and you're just constantly online talking. I think it's good to be passionate about your work and passionate about business, but there has to be control over that. Otherwise, you're gonna crash hard.
Yeah. I think that people also go into business trying to mimic a 9 to 5 schedule, right? Like working on the weekend is bad, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like those kinds of things. And, or whatever it is, taking a half day on Friday is bad, right? And so they try to put this like cookie cutter framework into that. Or an example, you mentioning like emotional reactivity and whatever, right? Like, if not to sound like I'm a heartless person, but let's say you're going through something, a breakup, I don't know, whatever, right? You still have to show up to that 9 to 5 and you can kind of like skate by. But I've seen people crash and burn in business because they're going through a breakup, for example, right? Like they just can't move through that and still show up
Yeah.
as them.
Yeah, they can't separate
Yeah.
the two.
And that's hard. Like that's really hard because I know you're getting, well, we both mentor, obviously like slightly different, right? But that's one of the things where, if I get a client that is really going through something, an injury is another one too, an injury that takes an athlete out of prep. Oh my God, depression immediately. What am I worth anymore? All those things, right?
Yeah.
I think it can really spiral fast if you don't have a vision for like what you want. I think some people just start this thinking, we'll see what happens. They have no idea like what they actually want, like for their life. You know what I mean, too? Um,
Yeah, I think if people lack value and lack that vision, that's why they don't see any progress.
I agree. I agree. I've had so many coaches come on here, whether they're business coaches, mentors like yourself, just experts in the industry, where I always like to ask them, what do you think is really holding a coach back? Like, let's start kind of at the beginner level. Like, what do you think is really holding people back from hitting a 10K month?
Um,
And let's just quantify that as just for ease. Let's just say that's 25 to 30 clients.
what's really holding them back?
Yeah, why can't coaches hit that?
I think a lot of it actually has to do with just the lack of confidence in themselves that then spirals into bad marketing, bad coaching. They don't have good, it's just the lack of confidence really can spiral a lot of issues. And that's why I tell people like it's good to it's good to take things slow so you could master stuff and get good at it so that you could have the confidence to continue. The slower you do things, the better you get time and experience and practice with it. Listen, you could take every mentor class under the sun. You could do every one of my courses, but if you don't apply it over and over and over and over again, you're never going to be confident in it. That's why I tell people like stop, like when they start, I always tell them, go find 5 friends, ask them to do it for free, and just coach them for free. And just get them to do it and just practice with them and just really get your reps in because that's what builds confidence over time. And like, I mean, dude, when I started coaching, I was coaching people for free for like a year. And like nowadays, that's like, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing that. Why aren't you charging $400 a month already? But like that's the reality of it. I think people lack the confidence or they jump in too fast and then they try to scale too quickly. And then they just don't have any foundation to really stand on. And then that kind of is, I think that's like the limiting factor for a lot of coaches on why they don't uh, make, $10,000 months. Now, granted, like older people will probably listen to this and be like, it took me years to get to that point. I think it's a lot different now with marketing and with angling yourself online and stuff. We could get there probably a little bit faster, longer than it like took me, for example. But now I think is a time where like if these people, these kids, these younger coaches, whatever, got more confident more quickly, but slowed down how many people they were taking on, they would probably get to that 10K mark a lot faster.
I think that, well, I agree with everything you just said, and I'm using 10K because that seems to be the first like milestone in a coach's head,
Yeah,
right?
it's a 5-figure month, right?
Right. And I really think it all comes down to one, a lot of times ego, right? Because I'll work with coaches that, to your point, have been trying forever and ever. And my favorite is like, well, this used to work years ago and it doesn't anymore. It's like, well, no fucking shit. Like the marketing I used 6 months ago has to change too. Welcome to an industry that is saturated
It's
and
evolving.
maturing, right? It's a
Yeah.
mature space. Online coaches in 2012 were blowing up. Now, not that virality equates to money by any means, but that's, I think there's also this focus on like, I have to be You get where I'm going. You
Yeah.
need
Well,
to
no,
fucking do
you
that.
said something right now that
Uh,
like dude, being viral nowadays does not mean you're going to make money.
no,
Like I
no,
know coaches with like multi six-figure followings that
broke.
are piss broke.
Mhm.
Like can't get a client to sign up for the life of them. So like the fact that you think you need a big following to make money is actually very false. You do not. So for anybody listening that thinks that, like please get rid of that. Like I like just recently crossed like 10,000 followers.
So
And
nice.
I would say I'm pretty successful in the space as far as like financially goes, but also like it wasn't a following that I really needed to do that. I think the more important thing to look at with like social media following is how engaging is the following that you have, right? Like my engagement is crazy high for what the following is. But like I know coaches with 100K plus followers that like can get one sign up a month or make a couple $1,000s a month when they, associate being viral and a lot of followers. The problem with going viral for some of these viral triggers, you're now viral because of an entertainment purpose, not because you might have posted something that was entertaining that got you a ton of followers. And now it's like people aren't following you for the value of your coaching. They're following you because you post some content that they enjoy to watch.
Well, it's what sells, right? It's what sells. And, I don't really think, again, I'm not a viral expert, but what I can tell you is every time I've had a client go viral, they're not making more money because of it, right? Like if anything, they're more distracted and stressed because they don't know how to handle the new influx of leads, right? Additionally, if you're a new coach and you do go viral and bring people in, oftentimes your marketing is so like muddied and not even clear that you're bringing in more people. It's why I don't tell coaches to run ads, like
Yeah, like your
scale
offer is not
organically.
clear.
No, no, and
Yeah.
and you're just posting bullshit. How to get more protein in? Use this peptide. It's like it's so fucking vague, right? So I think a lot of the holdup truly is people just are not consistent and they're avoiding the shit that will get them there, right? And so I always say, like, if you want to run a six-figure business, then what habits does that six-figure business owner have that you don't have, right? If I want to compete as a bodybuilder, I don't wait until peak week to hit my macros or I won't get there, right? Like, what do you need to do today to be that person? And it sounds so unsexy, but you know what sells? Let me help you go viral in 3 days with my funnel. That's, like that kind of shit is what goes viral. But like, I don't, or sells rather, but I do not coach virality. I do not coach ads to beginner coaches. Like, they do not need to spend money on that shit. Like, they need to get comfortable talking to strangers and like talking to people at the grocery store, talking to people at their gym, leveraging their network, things like that. I think people just start an online business and stay on their phone and think they'll come to me if I post things. Like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you got to get out there a little bit
Yeah,
more.
absolutely. So, okay, as you've grown your business, right? And there's always this like challenge, in my opinion, with maintaining culture and scaling systems, right? How have you been able to scale while still delivering personal connection? Because I know some coaches are like, I could never have more than 30 clients ever. And I'm like, well, that's a problem. But
Yeah, I mean, so at one point I had 215 active clients, which to everybody's like, oh my God, that's crazy. But it's really not if you have good systems in place. Like I had really good structure to my week and it was really doable. I mean, doable to the point where like I didn't work on a Sunday. Like, but how I was able to like grow while also maintaining good quality uh, was really just being very strict with like scheduling. So like the way I would always make sure that I was doing things and even how I do things now, because now I'm in a lot of different pots. So like I work for Raw and Revive. I do clinical education for Relive Health. I do coaching. I do one-on-one mentoring, and now I run a school platform. So like these are all things that are now on my plate, and they're all different streams of income too. So like they all need proper attention so that they can stay consistent income streams. But the way I look at it is is, I mean, we've been saying it multiple times today though, but like why scheduling is so important, why I think time blocking is very important, why I use time blocking, why I teach it to people, why I think you could also use like there's also this app you could buy for the computer called Rise. It's
I
an
love
AI.
Toggle as well, but yeah, yeah.
Toggle's really good too. And it just can help structure your day a lot more to where you're able to make sure that everybody's getting the attention they need at the quality level they need, but you're not wasting time. That's where I think coaches really suffer in being able to scale. Listen, dude, it's not that you can't handle more than 30 clients. It's that you're so disorganized that that's why you can't handle more than 30 clients.
I'm so happy you said that because I'm mom and you're like the cool older brother. And so they'll listen to you when they say that. But it's this idea, and I talk about this a lot, right? Like people reach a certain level in their business, whatever that level is, and things start to break left and right, and things start to feel harder. It's that like valley of death almost, where it's like, okay, um, so my mastermind is called Path to 4% because only 4% of coaches hit seven figures, right? Like that's a really fucking small number. And so if you think it's going to be easy, it's not, right? And so I see this happen a lot with coaches when they hit that like 30K to 50K mark where they just feel like I'm so sucked into the business again. And so I asked on my stories recently, I said, what's the common theme or a similarity between a coach making 10K a month and 50K a month? And it's they both feel like their time is capped. They both feel like they can't scale anymore.
Yeah.
And they start to doubt if it's worth it. And so I have a lot of coaches where they'll get to a certain point and they'll start telling themselves, like, man, I don't need to grow to X or that or whatever. It's like, it's not about the money that I'm talking about right now. It's the fact that you've now realized that your leadership might be sucking, right? Every team member you hire leaves. Or you might be realizing that your systems are dog shit. Like you can't scale if you're doing check-ins 6 days a week and your team doesn't hear from you, right? Or whatever it is, like,
Yeah.
and I agree with you. I'm literally reevaluating my schedule pretty much every 30 days, to be honest.
Yeah.
You
Well, I think once you hit a new like ring in the ladder, right? Like
know?
you talked about income levels. Like I think at every I don't know the exact number, but like every income level, like threshold you pass through, comes with new challenges. And it also comes with like new imposter syndrome. It comes with all of these things. That's when you need to audit. You need to audit how you spend time on your day, how you spend time on your phone, how you spend time doing things. I think why I think time blocking is really useful is because like coaches don't know what to do with white space on a calendar. Like you should like I've gotten so efficient to the point now where like most of the time I could look at white space and be like, okay, I know what I'm gonna do here. To where like I don't always time block now,
I'm
but
with you.
it's been years now like that. But in the beginning, everything. I mean, dude, down to like when I was gonna eat was
Same.
on this thing. But what it taught me was how to be efficient with my time, how to not waste time doing fluff work, right? And maybe work that could have been delegated somewhere, maybe work that I was doing that I had no business even doing. Like it didn't even need to be done right now, or it didn't even need to be done at all. Um, those are things that like time blocking can really teach you. I'm also a big fan of like it's called the Eisenhower decision matrix.
Yep.
Teaches you how to like look at a task and be like, okay, do I need to do it now? Can I do it later? Do I have somebody else do it? Or is it just a complete waste of time and nobody needs to do it? And it's a good way to like assess a task. I look at messages that I get from clients like that, emails I get from people. I go through that process every time I read something that needs to be like answered or needs to be done. But that's what makes me really efficient. Like some of my coach friends are like, dude, I don't understand how like you have so much time to do how much stuff you do every day. And it's like, well, it's because I'm just so structured to where when I wake up, I know exactly what I'm doing at exactly what hours.
I mean, I get it. And that's the same argument that I make with new coaches or anyone. Like if I just had more time, it's like in the
You
beginning,
have
you
time.
don't,
You
you don't,
just,
correct. But like you don't need more time in the beginning. Like you are 33% more likely to grow a business working a full-time job, like in the very, very beginning, right? Or like my new parents, right? Not to compare anything because I'm not a parent, but you don't need hours to start a business because the coaches that end up having hours overthink everything and scale slower, right? And additionally, I think it all comes back to, like you said, auditing everything that you're doing. Like what we're talking about sounds so unsexy and like not glamorous. And I know that, like tell us the real details. It's like, no, like if you at the end of the day cannot manage your schedule, then you can't manage your team, then you therefore won't have team retention and you therefore will not have the best delivery. Because I got to a point when I was scaling my business where it starts to get fun, right? Like you're like, ooh, okay, if I get to this income level, I could do this for my client. I could start doing these things. And that's where I started doing like hosting conferences and having retreats and having like all inclusive events. And it's like, that can't happen if I'm not where I want to be. Or, man, it'd be really great to have this level of expert in my business. Or, man, I want that to be my mentor, but I know that I need this to make that happen, right? It's not just about chasing money. I think once you get to a point where you realize you're never going to be homeless, risks become really easy, right? Like I told you at the beginning of this podcast, like once you realize that someone's going to pay you money, you're like, oh, I can like make income happen. But again, I think coaches are looking for this like magic answer. Or they're like, what if I had an app? What if I had this shiny thing? It's like,
Yeah.
no, no, you don't need the fucking app. Like, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's like yes, this stuff isn't like super appealing to listen to as far as like, I don't know, making it's the money comes, it's just it comes slower, but it comes more consistently for a longer time. That's why I've been able to do this for 10 years. That's why we make the money we make. It's because we've been doing it and are so structured. But on the flip side, these coaches get ads, they get things on Instagram, they get this, all right, hey, I'm going to teach you how to use Klarna and you're going to do $10,000 a year packages and you're going to get them signed up for X amount of dollars and et cetera, right? Which is all fine. Okay. If that's how you want to start, that's fine. But just understand that that might be your money for 6 months. And at that point, you'll probably not have any income in a year from now or 2 years from now. Maybe you go on a good hot streak for a little bit, but it's not going to be sustainable.
I'm going to tell you right now, I've never seen a coach that had super hot PIF months that had money in their savings.
Oh no, that's a new money spending right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what we call
Mm-hmm.
new money spending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Next podcast, we'll talk about financial literacy. I'm just kidding. But no, I just think,
I'd gladly do that.
listen, all right, part two. Part two is coming up. I mean, like, it's just I try to be, and I'm sure you do too, like I try to keep things so fucking simple, right? And it's like you're not going to build a business based on fast cash. Like I've seen fast scale. I'm somebody that probably most people would tell you grew fairly quickly, but like it has sustained every bit of the way because I focus on client delivery, MRR, and team retention, right? And I would argue that as you guys start to scale and grow, your team is more important than your clients. And I know that sounds awful, but like if your team is not taken care of, your clients not be cared for, et cetera, right? Because most of you listening are thinking about one day having an assistant coach or having a virtual assistant or a sales team or whatever, right? But if you can't even lead yourself and be responsible to get yourself out of fucking bed in the morning or like go to bed on time, you don't deserve a fucking six-figure business. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of responsibility too that people I think forget about during all this too. So I mean, I think the biggest, I think another big issue that you'll see a lot with these coaches is I think also just a lack of belief in themselves that they could
100%.
they could make the money and they could do this. I mean, dude, I tell people all the time, like, there's a lot of money on the table in fitness coaching. Like, you guys have no fucking clue how much money is on the table for fitness coaching. Like, it's I mean, I've been on a linear upswing of either over 100% year by year, which is a huge jump. Like I've been very consistent in that, thankfully. But like that being said, there's a lot on the table. Like every time you think you're capped, there's definitely a little bit more that you could do. And like you said, it's not about making more money. I mean, dude, you'll get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm like you said, like I'm never gonna be homeless. Like I'm past that point. Like I am at the point where it's now more like, what other cool things can I start to do now
Literally,
with the money, with the income? Like,
literally.
what are some new systems? What are new things I could hire? What are new things that I could implement? Like, I need money for that stuff.
Right. I mean, it just becomes so much less about you. And that's why in the very beginning of your business, right, you're trying to escape something, get out of debt, get out of a job. It is money driven. But when you get to a point where you're like, damn, I've never had this much security, then that's where that vision has to become clear because making an extra whatever is not it's not gonna excite you on your hardest days, right? And very few people can commit day in and day out because I always tell people, okay, so people ask me, how'd you scale to X so quickly? And I'll say, well, I committed delusionally before I even knew it was possible. I was so confident that I could fucking make it happen, even though I had no idea. But like I acted like it. And like when I look at stories on my Instagram from 6 years ago, I'm like, that's cute. Like, what is that? You know what I mean? And I like bringing that back because people always forget about our day ones, like
Yeah.
I will never forget the Christmas that I created a hit miss guide. I don't do hit. I was in prep creating some dumbass hit guide for Christmas. But you know what? That got me like 200 email addresses because I was getting real
Yeah.
happy with it. So it's like, I don't regret those things, but people are so unwilling to work through their cringe phase. Like, everyone go back and look at the first progress photo you took and tell me if it looks funny. Or the first piece of wine.
I think people are too worried to go through a cringe phase.
Mhm.
And also I think people are too worried about doing free work. I think I think nowadays, I don't know where it came from, but I think people are feel more entitled to being paid when you're probably not even at the point where you should be getting paid as far as like expertise level goes or whatever. But like, I mean, dude, you could sit back and look at like, okay, you could sit back and look at, I don't know, the courses that I made 4 years ago that nobody bought. Like that was 5, 6 hours of work. What did it cost me? Nothing. It cost me 5, 6 hours of work, right? If one person signed up, big deal. I wasted 5 hours. Okay, no problem. I probably wasted 5 hours doing dumber stuff. Like that's what I think people have people that the grasp on that concept has gone away. Like it's really hard for people to like commit some time to potentially turn it into income where they think they should just be getting paid from the start right away. Like I see people try to sell stuff without even having a product. Like they just try to sell it and then deal with making the product afterward. Could be like a guide. I've seen people sell guides that aren't even finished.
So then there's this talk of integrity, right? And like being able to sleep at night, you know?
I think some people don't care.
That is true. I mean, how many times have you seen a fitness coach who didn't do really well and then was a business coach the next day?
Yeah, I see that. I mean, I've seen a lot of nasty stuff, and I just think it's kind of the culture. I
Yeah.
don't think it's just our industry. I think it's just culture nowadays,
We're in the
society.
wild, wild west. You know what I mean? We really are.
That's the Western world for you.
Listen, it's wild. I'm just saying, anyone listening right now, if you have any self-doubt, get your ass on your stories right now or do something because I promise you, like, it has never been easier. And this whole scare of like, oh, it's so saturated. I promise you, you might be following all these gurus, but your ideal client following you, like, isn't. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to stand out if you just do one thing slightly different. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, be slightly different and speak to those people directly.
Yeah. Last thing, and we'll wrap up. What is a piece of advice that you would give yourself 1 year into business?
Um, I would say be vocal more on socials, show your personality. That was something I didn't do enough in the beginning. Um, people people hire people nowadays, right? You and I can get people very similar results. They're not hiring me or you because of the results. They're hiring us because of our personality. So I think if I could go back and fix something, that would definitely have been it when I started. I probably would have had maybe a little bit of a faster growth rate. Something might have changed. Maybe nothing would have changed, but that definitely would have been something I would have done differently. Um, and then just get comfortable speaking on a camera.
I love that. I'm really happy you said that because I never know what people are going to say. And Yes, the journalist in me is like, thank you for saying, because again, you're somebody that I'm sure coaches listening are like, oh, Dom wishes he would have done that. You know what I mean? Because I really do think that people just assume coaches like yourself just woke up one day with a successful business. You know what
I
I
wish.
mean? Yeah, same, literally same. There was blood, sweat, and actual tears, 100%. But I appreciate you hanging out and talking about all things ad hoc with coaching and business and whatnot. And I will make sure that all of your important links are in the show notes. But Dom, is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have?
No, no, thank you for having me on. It was great.